In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own comics using Google Drawings. The sample that you've got in front of you is a finished one that I've taken some screenshots or pictures from Google searches that I've done on the internet, and I finished it dropping in some shapes and dropping in some text boxes and things like that. So I'm going to show you how I made this comic, and then you can come back and watch this video as many times as you need to so that you can remember the steps, and then hopefully that'll help you when you're making your own comics for your projects. So really quickly, I'll show you a couple things on the screen here. What I did was all the pictures here were images that I found in Google image searches. I just searched up different things. Sometimes these little cartoon characters of people are called clip art. And sometimes you can find different shapes or animals or people. If you use the word clip art, that's CLIPART, when you do your Google image searches. So that's how I found all these different pictures of people. And then all of the different shapes that you see here, the little speech bubbles, I did that by using a couple of different things called either shapes or callouts in Google Drawings. And I'm going to show you how to make those here in just a moment. So this is my finished comic, but I'm going to open up a new comic that I have created ahead of time. And this one is a blank page. So if you come to Google Drawings and create a new drawing, you will end up with a blank page like this. Now, there's a couple of different things that I'm going to do here to get started. Right now, they start you with a blank background. Now, this background will be transparent. That means it's not going to be a color. It means the same thing as invisible. So if I want this background to be a particular color, if you look back on my other one, it was a black background. I can, on here, if I want to change the background color on here, all I need to do is do a right click. If you're using a Mac computer and you don't have two mouse buttons on the computer you're using, you can hold down the control button and click your mouse. And then I get a few different options here. I'm going to go to background, and I'm going to change the background color to black like I have in the other one. I could do white. I could change it to black. I could change it to a dark blue. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you can still see everything on your comic and it's not too distracting. So I'm going to keep mine black because that's what the other one was. Now I need to create the panels for my comic. The panels are those individual squares or rectangles that you use to put in the different pictures or drawings that you're going to use. So I'm going to come up here to shapes in Google Drawings. You'll see a little circle and a little square next to each other. And I'm going to choose shapes, and there's a lot of different shapes to choose from, but I'm just going to choose a regular rectangle here. Once I've chosen that, I'm going to click and drag with my mouse and make the shape that I want. If I want to change it later, I can absolutely change it and make it a different shape. Kind of stretch it out a little bit. So I've made my first shape. Now, if I want to make some more, I'll just come back up here to shapes. And I will make the rest of my panels. Now, one of the things you'll notice as you start to create your panels, if I click and drag to move this around, you'll see a red line and you'll see some little blue lines. In order to keep this evened out on your page so that everything is spaced out evenly, you'll notice that red line tells me that it's matched up with the one to the left. That means they're both in the same spot. They would line up perfectly. Those little blue lines underneath show me that I have the same amount of space between panel number 1 and panel number 2, and then panel number 2 and panel number 3. So it's going to be evenly spaced. These black spaces right here are going to be the same between these two. Now you'll notice that these two panels line up with each other perfectly. This third one is a little lower. So I'm going to click and drag up on that one until I have the red line going through all three, and now I know that they're lined up perfectly. and there's the same equal amount of space between the two panels here. So that lets me know that I have lined everything up just the way I wanted it to be. Now, depending on how many panels your comic has, you can go in and put the other ones, the other shapes down here too. And see, if I drag it until I see some of those red lines, then I'll know that it matches up perfectly. And there we go. So now what I need to do is I need to get the pictures that I'm going to use to put into these panels so that I have my comic image. What I've done ahead of time is I've gone and done some Google image searches, and I've saved some pictures in my Google Drive. I've made a folder in Google Drive, and I've saved some pictures in there. So now if I go to Insert Image, I'm going to go to Drive. And like I said, I saved some ahead of time. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to grab this picture of the girl, picture of the boy, picture of the happy jumping people, picture of the girl feeling like she accomplished something, the superheroes, and the Google Drawing logo. Now it says I've selected 6 drawings, or 6 images, and I'm going to click Insert. Okay, so now all 6 of those have been dropped into my comic down here. Okay, so now from here, I'm going to put those into the panels that they need to go into. And since they all have white backgrounds, all these panels I created have a blue background. So I might want to change that so that they match up and it doesn't look like I've got 2 different colors there. The way I do that is I click on the panel, I look up here to where it has a little like a paint bucket, and it says Fill Color. I'm going to change that fill color to white. And so now it looks like it's all part of the same panel. And I may go through and do that with all of my different panels I created. If your picture for some reason had a different color background, you would just switch it to whatever color background that picture had. Okay, so now I have arranged my different pictures into the panels I wanted them to go into. And I might need to resize them a little bit more just so they fit better inside each one of them. Now I need to be able to go through and I need to create, might need to resize these just a little bit so that I can fit some speech bubbles into these other ones. Move him over just a little bit. Okay, so now that I've got my panels all set and I've got my pictures inside of them, one thing I did want to say is you can use clip art, but you can also draw something and then take a picture of it, put that picture in your Google Drive account, or you can even take a picture of yourself and put that in your Google Drive account and use those too. It's really up to you. So now I'm going to come back over to the shapes, and instead of shapes, I'm going to come down here to where it says callouts. In a comic book, a callout is anything like a speech bubble or a little scroll, like piece of paper looking type shape that helps explain something in your comic. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to grab one of the callouts here, and I'm going to click and drag to create the shape, just like I did when I was creating the panels. Now, if you notice this little triangle down here that shows it should be pointing towards the person's mouth who's saying it, it's down here, and I actually would want it to be up here by her mouth to make it look like she's saying this. So if I grab this little orange looking diamond that's right here, you see my mouse turns into a plus. If I click and drag that, I can drag it right up to here. So it makes it look like she's the one that's saying whatever's going to go in this box. And then I'll double click on the box and I will say, We were looking for a way to create comics for our class project. Okay, so now I have my first speech bubble in there. Now I'm going to go on to my next panel. He's going to say something different. It's a different person, so maybe I'll choose a different shape. Maybe one that's a little bit more rounded instead of a rectangle. I'll drag this up here so it's pointing towards his mouth. Okay. My Google Drawing logo is probably not going to be speaking because it's a logo and not a person. So I might want to just put a normal text box in here, or I can come back to shapes or callouts and I can use one of these little description scrolls. So as you can see, I'm going through, I'm creating all my different shapes, I'm creating all the different speech bubbles that I would need for these different panels. In my other comic, I had left a little bit of space up at the top to give it a title, so you may want to do that as well. One thing that you can do if you want to move a whole bunch of things all at once is I can click off to the side of the comic. If I click and drag my mouse over and select all of these things, then I can drag them all down together at the same time. I can do that up here too. I'll just drag everything down at the same time. And now that leaves me some space up at the top where I can put a title here. If you want to use what I used for my title, I'm going to go up here to Insert, and I'm going to choose Word Art. It really doesn't let you change the font, but it does give you some other options for changing the color of your text, making it a little bit bigger. Creating comics with Google Drawings. And I'm going to hit Enter. Okay, now you'll see here it created kind of a word art title for me, and I can reshape this the same way I would if it was a picture. And I can come up here, so notice it got filled in with blue just like my text bubbles did. So maybe I want to change that to like a bright yellow so it's easier to see. So that's how you create a comic using Google Drawings. I'll show you one more example of one that I did. I chose the example, I know one of your examples is to finish the story or create a sequel. So there's a comic book that came out when I was a kid where Superman, the superhero, died. And if I was to create a sequel to that, I might create a comic book about what happens to the world after Superman dies. So I actually drew these pictures myself and took a picture of it with my phone. And I saved those to Google. And then when it came time for me to fill in my panels, instead of dropping in those cartoon clip art images that I found from a Google image search, I just pulled in the photographs that I had taken that were in my Google Drive account. I also dropped in a picture here. I didn't draw this one down here, but I dropped in a picture from a Google image search of the original Death of Superman comic book, and I dropped that in there too. I used word art for my title, I used boxes for descriptions, and I used speech bubble callouts for my dialogue or having my characters speak. And that is how you create a comic using Google Drawings.